Want to see an example of the best types of gardening lesson plans, the type that grow you a garden while connected to your curriculum and boost your students' engagement with learning like magic? Then you are listening or watching the right podcast episode because I'm about to share my screen and show you a bunch of really cool stuff. I'll do my best to be very descriptive to those of you who are listening in and not watching this episode on YouTube, but I do encourage you to go into the show notes from wherever that you're watching and click on the link to the visual version of this episode on YouTube because it will make a lot better sense if you're watching what I'm showing you. I'm Leila Mireskandari, your host, and this is episode number 35 of the School Gardens with Ease podcast. In the last two episodes, I walked you through step by step how to write a series of cohesive lesson plans that connect your curriculum, but at the same time helps you and your students to grow a food garden during class time. Now you're ready to see an example of one of those types of lesson plans so that the dots are connected in your brain, and then you're hopefully ready to write your own. The lesson plan that I'm about to show you, I picked this one because this is included in all three of our programs, OASIS Classroom, OASIS School, as well as Kaha OASIS, because it's an essential lesson. So if you've been curious about the OASIS programs, this is your chance to have a sneak peek into one of the lessons of these programs. I think by now we understand that to grow a garden, a school garden, a classroom or a school garden, any type of educational garden that's impactful and grows, an abundance of food, you can't just go with a few activities here and there and grow things willy-nilly. You need to have a proper plan and you need to have a series of cohesive lesson plans. So what I'm about to show you is only one of those lesson plans, but don't make the mistake of thinking, okay, so I can grow a garden with one lesson plan or two lesson plans. Now, each one of those lesson plans need 7 different layers to be considered. So let me share my screen and show you what I mean exactly. All right. So the first layer is it indoors or outdoors? That's very important. The second layer is your seeds list. Third is your tasks list. Fourth is your lessons list. Fifth is your timing and placement. Sixth is your schedule. Seventh are your extension activities. So the number one is the indoor outdoors. Are you going to be growing a classroom garden only, which is fantastic, by the way, you don't have to go outside, or have you decided to go outside and grow an outdoor garden? Then you need the list of the seeds that you're going to be growing. Then you need the tasks list. And this is a very important item. If you have listened to the past 2 episodes, you know how important this is. You can't start with your curriculum. You have to start with your tasks list. And then there is your lessons list. And this is all those lessons that you want to teach your students on top of growing their own food that are related to growing food. Seeds, sunlight, water, soil, animals and insect, biodiversity, all of that good stuff. That's your lessons list. Then you need to have your timing. You need to figure out all those seeds timing according to your gardening zone. And you need to know the placement of those. If you're outdoors, you need to know where you're putting all those seeds. So timing and placement is your 5th layer. Then you put all of those 5 items into your school schedule, which means you take your seeds list, your tasks list, your lessons list with your timing and placement and put it on the schedule. And don't worry, I'm going to, give you a very detailed example and show you how to do that. And then the 7th layer is all those what I call extension activities, all those lessons that you would like to, teach your students, but with an activity, with some hands-on craft type thing. For example, if one of your lessons in your lessons list is about biodiversity and the beneficial animals and insects of the garden, you might want to be building bee hotels or bird feeders, for example, with your students. And I call those your extension activities. So let's go through one example. If you, let's say that you decide for your first layer that you're going to be growing a classroom garden. Then for your second layer, you have your list of seeds. You have figured that out. And then sunflower, let's say, is part of that list. And your tasks list, you know that sunflowers, you need to actually start them indoors. So that's one of the tasks that relates to sunflower. And then since this is an indoor garden, you know that you start in your seeds, so your placement is, indoors. We're going to talk about timing in a minute, so just bear with me. Then you have your list of lessons, and sunlight is in that list. And sunlight and sunflower kind of go together very well, and they also do go together very well in terms of timing. I'm going to show you that in a second. So that's your fourth layer, your fifth layer. And for your seventh layer, which are the extension activities, you decide, let's say, as for this example, that you want to build sundials and solar cookers with your students. So that would be your sunlight sunflower lesson. Now, how do you put all of that, that lesson, all those 6 different layers that you have figured out, on the schedule, which is your sixth layer? So let's look at that. So if I go, so for those of you who are listening in and not watching, what I'm about to do is go to the website kidsgrowingcity.ca, and I'm clicking on the menu at the top, teachers dash schools. And if I do that, it takes to a page. And one items on this page is a link to the OASIS program suite. And if I click on that, it takes me to another page with 4 of our programs right at the top. And I'm clicking on the OASIS Classroom program. And when I click on the OASIS Classroom program, it takes me to that program page. And at the top, I can choose to go to lessons list. So I'm clicking on the lessons list. So this is week 1 to week 11 lessons of the OASIS Classroom program. And as you can see, the sunlight lesson, which is the example in this episode, is week 9. The reason for it to be week 9 is that here in Canada, Toronto, Canada, and or anywhere in the United States, from middle of the United States to the north, essentially we don't get a lot of sunlight in March. Like if I put this in week 1 or week 2 or week 3 or week 4 or even week 5 or even sometimes week 6 of the program, that week you might not even find one sunny day in that week. So if you put the sunlight lesson at some time that your weather does not cooperate and it's not sunny, your lesson wouldn't make sense. And that's why we're putting sunlight lesson not together with the other main gardening element lessons like soil, water, and seeds, but distant from them at a time that we are sure that we're going to get at least one really good sunny day during that week. Okay, so these are all the different things that you have to figure out when it comes to your timing. So let me go back to my presentation. So essentially, your sunlight and sunflower lesson, you need to put it somewhere in May to make sure that there is sunlight. And for your sunflowers, if you go to growveg.com, as I have instructed you in the previous episodes, and find out the timing for all of your seeds, if you look at that, you'll see that May would be perfect time for starting to grow sunflowers. If you grow your sunflowers in March, way too early for them. They're going to, get way too tall on you before the weather outside is proper for them to go out, or for you to, even if you're doing a classroom garden and you're selling your seedlings, it's whoever buys them, it's going to be too early for them to put it in the garden, and they're all going to go to waste, and you don't want that. So timing is super important, and sunflowers are perfect to be grown in May as well. They also grow very, very fast. That's another reason. So that's what that is. Now, for those of you who are listening and not watching, I have a timeline on the screen right now, starting from March all the way to September of next year. And I am placing the sunlight lesson in May. And so we have figured out we have figured all the 7 layers of this lesson. But as you know, this is not the only lesson plan in the series of cohesive lesson plans that we've been talking about in the past 2 episodes. This is just one lesson. So I suggest to have at least 10 or 11 lessons, and that's what we have. 11 lessons is what we have in our OASIS Classroom program, as well as the Kaha OASIS program, and our OASIS School program is even 12 lessons, 12 weeks. So you need to have a bunch of different lessons, and they have to be related to each other, and for you to be able to actually grow a garden, right? We've talked about that before. So here is how you place all of your lessons. So you figure out all the 7 layers of the lessons and you put them on the schedule, like something like this. So we are starting the first lesson in March all the way to end of May. And if your school year ends at the end of June, for example, you might be able to start a little bit later, like middle of March or beginning of April. But I always suggest that you at least leave 2 weeks at the end of your school year free, because it wouldn't make sense to grow pumpkins on the last day and the kids aren't there to actually watch them grow or to actually do anything with them, right? So 2 weeks at the end of the school year at least needs to be free. So you put all of your lessons like that on the schedule. Now that we have figured out all the 7 layers of our sunlight lesson plan, we know that it's going to be sunflowers growing, and our extension activities are sundial and solar cooker. And we also know that where and when we're doing that lesson. Now we have to sit down and write this lesson plan. So let me show you our sunlight lesson plan that we have in all our 3 OASIS programs. And before we do that, since I know that you might be actually excited to see all the other elements in our program, because we also have student booklets and classroom wall posters and materials checklists on top of our lesson plans, let me show you the sunlight booklet. What you see on the screen is our sun booklet. This is the print version, and that's why it looks weird. It starts with the back of the booklet, and then there's the front of the booklet, and on the second page there's page 1 on the left hand side. On the third page is this page 2 on the right side, so on and so forth, because this is for you to print your booklets on 8.5 by 11 paper on both sides for it to be a pretty booklet. But we also have the online version of the booklet so that you can project it in your classroom on your wall, so that when you're working with your students during this lesson, you can actually have it on the wall and walk through it. And this is in the proper order in terms of the pages. So let's go through it. And these are booklets that your students work with. You print for them, they work with it, and they take it home to their families. And there's growing instructions in here, lots of fun information in here that they can share with their families. So we start with, did you know it's not actually the sun that moves in the sky? And there's also talking about the seasons. Where's the sunlight if you're in the northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere, which also talk about the photosynthesis and all the fun stuff. Why does it matter? How to tell if your seedlings are getting enough sunlight or not. Then we have the materials list for the growing activity and the step-by-step how to grow your sunflowers. And there's a word games page, as you can see. There is a journal page for your students. There's also another page that we talk about how the energy of the sun is the origin of all energy on planet Earth. And there's also, cartoons and jokes and fun things here and there. There's also the self-assessment page. And on the back of the booklet, there is always a quote that relates to the lesson of that booklet, which in this case is the sun lesson. This is the classroom wall poster that comes with this lesson. As you can see, it's very fun, very colorful, lots of information. Some of the information in the booklet is in here, and some extra information is in here as well. Then let's move on to the materials checklist. All the things that you need for your growing activity, for your sundial, for your solar cooker, and all of that. And last but definitely not least is, let's walk you through the sunlight lesson plan, which is week number 9. There's a learning objectives section. There's a vocabulary section. There's materials, supplies. Even though we do have this in a separate document, but we also have it in here for your ease of use. And the most important part of the lesson plan is the lecture notes. We start by asking your students how much they think our lives depend on the sunlight. So as you can see, this is a discussion. This is not this is not the type of lesson that you just talk and talk and talk. You engage your students in the discussion, and that's how they learn. And there's all kinds of pointers in here for you to that helps you to know how to teach this. And obviously you can add your own things into this. And throughout your lesson, you obviously have your booklets to work with, and your students have that, and they fill it out and they can take it home to their families, and you can connect this to your math and language and science and all the good stuff. Then there's a demo section on this lesson plan. The planting activity, how to demonstrate this to your students so that they know how to do it before they start doing it. Also for the extension activities, the sundial as well as the solar cooker. So you will demonstrate how they're going to do it. And then there's the hands-on activities section. How do you organize your students to actually do the planting and take them outside for the solar cooker and the sundial and all of that? There's an additional resources section with links and some extra links and information for you that you might want to add to your lesson. And at the end of each lesson plan, we have the student booklet word game answers, so that when your students are working with their booklet on the word games, they might have questions, and you have the answers over here so that you can help them. And that is the an example of one of the lesson plans, the 11 lesson plans that we have in the OASIS Classroom program, also in the OASIS School and the Kach OASIS program. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope that you learned a lot watching that. If you have not listened to the past two episodes number 33 and 34, this lesson plan writing essentially starts there. If you haven't listened to those or watched those, please go ahead and do that, because there's a lot that comes before focusing on one lesson. You need to know how to write a cohesive collection of lesson plans that grow you a school garden or a classroom garden. I hope this was helpful, and the link to the visual version of this episode on YouTube is in the show notes. If you're interested and excited about the OASIS programs and want to know more information about those, that link is also in the show notes. I hope this was helpful. I will see you next week in another episode.